Hello, good evening, and thank you for coming to the 2021 Lake County Film Festival. I am Nat Dykman, Executive Director of the festival, and I'm very excited to present this Q&A here for the feature film Yes, I Am, the Ric Weiland Story, and we have Director Aaron Baer here. Hello.
Hey, Matt, how's it going?
Great. And we also have the director of the short film, one of the short films beforehand, Dear Lily, Love Patrick, and this is Jennifer Bartels.
Hi, Nat.
How's it going?
Good.
Good. Shorts are usually in front of features. I'd love to talk to you, Jennifer, first, and I don't know if you want to hop in on the discussion about the Ric Weiland story as well. But I don't. I guess I can play dumb here and say, how did you come across this story for? How did you come across this story about Lily and Patrick?
Well, Patrick Cowley, the subject of my film, was my mother's very good friend from college. So I've always been aware of him. He died when I was very young. I was around 8 years old. So I have a few memories of him coming to visit. He lived in San Francisco. We lived in upstate New York. I do have a few memories of him, but he's always just been kind of like this big presence in our lives. I think, my mother has really kept his spirit alive. And, I decided I wanted to make a documentary about him. I learned a little bit more about him and what he was doing. He was making music in San Francisco. Let me backtrack a little bit. They met in college, became very fast, very close friends. After college, he moved out to San Francisco. My mother was in New York. And he started producing disco music in San Francisco and kind of pioneering this other kind of music called high energy music. And he was really making some inroads with his career. His star was kind of on the rise. And then he, I believe, was one of the first several hundred people to die from AIDS, kind of right as his career was taking off. So I became more interested in his music and what he was doing out there in San Francisco with synthesizers and disco music and high energy. And I started planning the film in the fall before COVID happened. And it was originally intended to be kind of like a broader kind of, story of his career, his life and career. And I had reached out to a lot of people, I had started making connections, started having phone calls, doing lots of research. And I was just beginning to plan some traveling to go and do interviews when COVID hit. And so then, I wasn't going anywhere, but I still kind of wanted to work on the film. And, it was proving to be very challenging. So, at one point I just was like, okay, what do I actually have that I can work with? I didn't want to do like Zoom interviews for the film. I know some people have done that and it's been great, but, so I was just trying to focus on what can I do like in my apartment by myself with just my computer. And so I had some letters that my mother had given to me that Patrick had written her over the years. And I just read them over and over and over again. And I was like, there's so much here. And so I decided to make the movie about their friendship instead of making it about his career. And so there is a section in the movie about his career, of course, and a section about his death. But mostly it was just about the two of them and, their story. And I wrote some interview questions for my mom and emailed them to her, and she recorded them on her iPhone and sent them back to me. And so, her voice and excerpts from his letters are really kind of like the backbone of the film. And I'm actually so glad that it worked out that way. There are some people doing like Patrick's legacy work. There is a body of work about him, and I like contributing to that in like a really specific way that, having this little perspective that maybe someone else couldn't show about his life and their friendship.
It's such a, I mean, I don't know, weird shock when that statistic comes up that was one of the first
Yeah.
to die, and it
Yeah.
is so touching at the end when they mention you, and you're like, when you've got someone talking about you as such a little girl,
Yeah.
while in those parts is so great.
Yeah.
And it is so interesting how COVID has changed so many films that I've talked to over the last year, including the Zoom interviews, and just some people have had to cut things off, and some people have made something completely different. And just I found this opportunity because of COVID, and us getting to talk,
Yeah.
when the festival was in person. If you didn't come out, that was it. And now this is the second year where I get to talk to so many great filmmakers with so many interesting stories.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good lesson. I mean, it was an interesting lesson for me to learn so early. This is my first film. So, I feel like that's a good lesson to have kind of like thrown at you early on, is that, things are probably not going to turn out the way you envision them turning out. And so how can you kind of like move with that instead of, being angry or putting it off? I could have put it aside and not worked on it now, but I'm so happy I did, for the reason I mentioned. And also, I mean, even if I had decided not to start entering it into festivals, at the end of the day, the way I see the film is that it's a really beautiful gift for my mother, and for the people who I've met who knew and loved Patrick, and the other people who are trying to keep his spirit alive today.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think you'll, now once this all winds down, do you think you'll continue Patrick's story in another form? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I would love to keep working on this. Yeah.
Cool.
Definitely. Right. Yeah, for sure. And that's like, I would love it to be like a collaborative thing. I've met so many people. Yeah, in one form or another, I would like to continue forward working on a bigger film about him.
Great. Well, we'll definitely keep our eyes open for whatever comes next with, this film and our next film or whatever's going on.
Yeah. Thank you.
So Aaron, what about you? How did COVID alter your film?
I echo all of Jennifer's comments. Well, COVID specifically altered it in the way that it altered everyone. Its festival season kind of just got really screwed up for a lot of people, and releasing a film during a time when you're a filmmaker and you spend so much time and energy and effort and heart that you're putting into your film, and you have this kind of idea about how it's supposed to be released, and you never expect something like a pandemic to happen. So in that sense, it altered it. But much like Jennifer was saying, it really, I had to really just make a decision, and I had been making this film for 5 years, and sort of put a stake in the ground and say, I'm done. And it did feel finished. I felt like I had spoke with a lot of people, some of the key people in Ric's life along the way. And I felt, you start making a documentary and it slowly starts to come together in these little bits and pieces. And then it starts to sort of live on its own. And I kind of felt like I had this sort of living thing after 5 years. So I had sort of finished all the filming, and then I started doing post on it. And right during at the very beginning of all the major post-production, COVID happened. So I really didn't have a plan. It just sort of, I just had to sort of go with the universe and whatever way that it was going to manifest. And luckily, by the time I got around to start showing it, people were more comfortable to start watching it in a theater. I just got to show it at the Seattle Queer Film Festival here, and I live in Seattle, and the place was packed, and people there were a lot of people in the audience who knew Rick and knew who he was
Mm.
and were friends with him, and which was amazing because it was really hard. I mean, finding out about Rick was like a lot like cracking up in a cold case. There was a lot of research, a lot of detective work because he was such a private person. And I say that like I cannot drive that home. It's enough. He never gave an interview. He never wanted to be known for his accolades. A true philanthropist, and so in so many words. Uh, so when I saw so many people in the audience who knew him, it was really touching that people showed up. But also, I kind of felt like, where were you? Where were you in the 5 years to help tell the story? But um, Rick's legacy and Rick's life. I'm very proud of the film, and I feel like his light is finally shining.
Let me rewind here for a second because I knew Jennifer's connection to her story. How did you find out about who Rick is to begin with? How did you become aware of him and decide to make a film about him?
Yeah, so I had read a headline in the Seattle Times about Rick's death, and but this was years before or a year before I started actually making the film. Or no, yeah, years before I started making the film, and I finished my first film, Finding Kim, and I was showing it. This was May of 2016, and I was approached by one of Rick's friends after one of my showings, and he said, "Hey, I have this idea about a documentary, and you're at a film festival, and you're having all these 30-second conversations." And I said, "Sure, yeah, email me," and he did. And I went over to, and this was Michael Fela. He's in the film, one of Rick's best friends, and and that was August of 2016. And I went over to meet Michael, find out about Rick. If this was a story I could tell, if this was a story I wanted to tell, could I tell it authentically? Could I tell it honestly? And that was just the tip of the iceberg. Not even the tip. It was. There was so much information to uncover, and I had signed up. I had said yes, and the further I discovered about Rick, the more I discovered about Rick, then I just became so attached and in love with him in so many ways, and I got to see so many different personal sides of Rick that a lot of people didn't get to see because I was talking to a lot of his colleagues who did not know anything about his personal life, and vice versa, talking to a lot of his friends who really knew nothing about his philanthropic work. And then I found his diaries, which were his personal voice, and I had to really treat those very delicately along the way. I respected those because this was such, I wouldn't want anyone reading my diaries or journals. So I had to just pull out bits and pieces of this is important in his life, this is important to help carry the story through. I left a lot of things out, of course, but did I answer the question? I mean, it was like, yeah, it was. I got to know when it first came to me, I knew nothing virtually, and then along the way, I feel like Ric Weiland has changed my life as a filmmaker and as a human being, as someone, as how I carry myself in this world, how I treat other people. Rick has changed that.
It seems really, really easy to get really infatuated with him. And I don't say something like this lightly, but like it feels, and maybe it should feel like this when you watch a biography about someone, but it feels like he's an American hero. He really encompasses all of those.
Yeah. I shout his legacy from the mountaintops, and he really did truly change the world in so many ways that it's kind of boggling that no one knows who he is. So I hope that this film represents him as a person, as a philanthropist, as a friend, as a lover, as someone who just cared about wanting to make a difference. So it's Yes, a hero is the correct word.
I wrote this down while I rewatched it. Someone who I don't remember who it was who says in the film that um, uh, the people that only know him for his philanthropic work don't know who he really is.
Yeah, I think because we all have dualities in our lives, and I think with Rick, he sort of compartmentalized all of that, where he didn't show different sides of him to, say, his coworkers or his friends. So it's like he treated these people in sort of boxes in a way. So I guess in that regard, yeah, not everyone knew who Rick was in a certain light, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, this was in reference to the fact that he was basically putting out all this money for this philanthropic work, and my immediate thought was, does that not tell us so much about him?
Yeah, it does.
I mean, it really does. I mean, there are other elements, but those elements are all represented in the fact that he worked so hard to change the world in such a positive way.
Yeah, and also it begs that I get asked this question a lot, like, why do you think he took his own life? And I always end up with the answer of, like, I don't know. I never set out to answer that question. I like mental health and depression, and such severe depression is something that's so personal in a lot of ways. And what I do know is that Rick did truly want to make a difference and help change the world forever. Like, the way he set up all of his money to be released is in perpetuity forever. Yeah, it's crazy, and that will continue to make a difference. And these are organizations that started out as grassroots organizations like GLAAD and ACT UP that are now these huge organizations. So I mean, I could have spent another 5 years making this documentary. Yeah, I think
that was actually something that I thought of when you said that it was the right time, because this film is a really weird length.
Yeah,
66 minutes. And the first thing that one of the last things I always ask is, what's next for the film? And that's such a weird length to answer, right? I mean, you're probably not going to be in theaters. You're too long to even be on television. You're going to have to cut out 15, 20 minutes to fit in an hour. Do you have a plan to cut stuff out? Because it seems like it's also important. And I also can't picture I can't picture you not finding another 18 minutes of stuff to add to it.
Yeah. Yes, I do have a plan. I have an A, B, and C plan, of course, but it definitely, I made the film that I made, and I want to stick with that. So it's, hopefully, I mean, just with everything and how things work with, Netflix and Hulu, and, you can be whatever length. I think it's a little more forgiving these days versus traditional broadcast rules, or traditional sort of like theatrical release rules. But yeah, the length I wanted to stay true to the film, and instead of trying to like put in filler or add or subtract to meet a certain length, felt just wrong altogether. Like I was doing Rick a disservice. I was doing the film and myself a disservice. So yeah.
As someone who's been in a lot of Q&As about documentaries, I still think so many things are just, really the same and similar and cut and dry. But I really wanted to talk to you about the process of the archival footage, which is so impressive. Where did you find all this footage? Just of people out and about and society of the day.
Yeah, I wanted to show archive footage that we hadn't seen 100,000 times, especially in the queer community, where you see the same stuff a lot. So I wanted to find things. I dug through a ton of Washington State Library archives. I looked in other city archives. I looked at a lot of stuff within. There's just different Pride Foundation archives as well. Old news archives from weird, like small town local archives that was willing to charge me pennies or give it to me for free. So it just that the archiving process was an arduous process of trying to just find stuff that we hadn't seen before.
Cool. Jennifer, did you have any thoughts or comments? I know you watched the film today, I believe.
Yeah, I watched it last night, and I kind of felt the same way you did, just like very touched by who this person was, and kind of incredulous that I hadn't heard of him before. Especially when you got to the part about him going to talk at GE.
Yeah,
because I grew up in Schenectady. So I grew up like right near GE, and so.
I thought because I had contacted GE and I thought that I got close to finding maybe something in their archive where maybe someone had recorded his actual speech.
Oh, wow.
But the whole conversation kind of teetered out. And
yeah.
I'm sure you might have ran into this, but along the way, it's like you start making a documentary and you follow a lead and you start having a conversation with someone and then it just kind of either falls by the wayside or you're no longer interested. And it's true for big organizations. And I mean, this is no shade to GE, but that did happen to where like whether the person just became not interested or they couldn't find it or whatever. So I had to revert to plan B, which was I found a really amazing animator here in Seattle named Neely, and we went through his diaries and we pulled out different things along the way that we could animate. And the GE thing was sort of an afterthought. I found some additional funds and I went back to her and I said, hey, I couldn't get this speech, but it was really important in Ric's life and his career that changed the policy for this huge company forever. So I went back and we animated that little GE thing where he's talking and and then of course I got Zachary Quinto to narrate the voiceover, which was a huge like surprise in a way. I was talking to my producers Fenton Bailey and Randy Barbado at World of Wonder, and they said, wouldn't it be awesome to get a celebrity to do the voiceover? And I said, yeah, that would be great.
No celebrities.
And I just, it was in my head. I was down in Los Angeles. I went back to my hotel room and I just wrote down a list of 5 out gay celebrities that was important to me. And Zachary was at the top. And somewhere along the way, through a friend of a friend, as the universe works, he found out about the movie. They wanted to hear the pitch. His agent said, write him a letter. So I wrote him a 1-pager letter of the who, where, when, and why of Ric, the importance of his legacy, and also why I think Zach would be great in speaking in his voice. And this was like height of COVID. And I had to haul ass down to LA, find a studio that would be open, that would do it and record it in half a day. And he was just a bright shining light and all at the sort of the tail end of production out of all of this, and such a pro. Like working with an actor like Zachary Quinto, he had Ric dialed in so much from the get-go. He didn't roll in and say like, hi, I'm Ric Weiland. None of that. It was like he knew. I had sent him some of the diary entries, so he had sort of a tone to already go from, but there was very little direction that I had to give him. So thank you, Zach.
He sounds perfect. I mean, not that he hasn't done plenty of acting and voiceover before, but yeah, he's perfect for the role. One thing I found myself thinking about during that GE segment actually is where Microsoft was on LGBT issues. Were they far ahead of the curve, or?
Yeah, Microsoft was always way ahead of the curve, and one of the reasons is because of Ric. I mean, Ric started Microsoft with Bill Gates and Paul Allen So they were 10 steps ahead of every huge organization, especially at that level, especially when you have thousands of employees. They were kind of the touchstone of how you treat your employees. Yeah, and Rick was pivotal in making all of that and setting sort of the foundation.
Cool. I don't even think I have a question here, but it was just something I thought about because I was thinking, like Jennifer, that when you're digging into movies and independent films and documentaries like this, you find out so many people that you didn't know about that were so important. And I felt a little weird. I just had this weird thought that so many of these marginalized people in marginalized groups that we don't know about are changing things. And so we need documentaries about them. Whereas all of our non-marginalized people, we know so much about them already that we can move on to narrative things about them. We can see it, whatever, Steve Jobs, can have a narrative movie. Ric Weiland does not have one yet because no one knows who he is. I don't know. But, do you think you'll continue to work just in documentary form?
No, I said I was going to take a break from doing documentaries after this one, but as the world has it, one landed in my lap like 2 weeks ago. That I'm just starting, and I'm hesitant to say anything quite yet because nothing's officially signed, but I'm starting to see that it's about do you know the actor Tom Skerritt?
Yeah.
So he lives here in Seattle, and he got to see Yes I Am, and I've just, long story short, connected with him and his wife, and they run a channel out of Seattle called the Evergreen Channel, and I had drinks and dinner with them the other day, it was like a month ago, and he was telling me he was starting to write his book and his memoir, and just like such a cool, down-to-earth guy, like an actor who never wanted to be an actor, and he's 88 and still acting at 88, and it's just like amazing. And I said, hey, Tom, like, has anyone ever made anything about you? He's like, no. And then the next thing I know, so I'm going to go shoot one of my first shoot days in a little less than 3 weeks. He's in this really cool movie called East of the Mountains right now. That's if you guys haven't had a chance to see the trailer, it's like he's amazing in it. And I don't want to give anything away, but check out the trailer for it. So Sweet. Yeah, starting to work on that a little bit.
A documentary about Tom Skerritt.
Yeah.
Wow. Great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, like I said, that's usually my last question is what you're doing next. Anyone have anything else to say? Thoughts, comments?
Well, thanks for programming our films together, Nat.
Yeah.
I see a lot of parallels between Jennifer's story and my story about Rick. It's thank you for being very thoughtful about that.
Oh yeah. No,
I agree. And I'm so glad, Aaron, that I got to see your film. It really did. It was very touching. It really was.
Thank you very much.
And like I feel like I want to tell everyone I know about Ric Weiland now. Just be like, hey, did you even? I can't believe that I didn't know this guy existed.
Yeah.
So, and I wanted to add one more thing that I think about your film that is so important and so timely, especially about all the work he was doing and all the money he was donating, and how like nobody knows about that. It's so the opposite of the time we're living in now, where everything is so performative.
Yeah.
And anytime somebody does anything, it's out there on social media. It's like, I'm doing this. And so like, I don't know. I feel like it's important for people to see that and be reminded that, not everything. Yeah.
I completely agree that need your name on the side of the building, or you don't,
Right.
need 100,000 likes to be validated.
It's so important right now. Yeah.
Agreed.
He mostly missed the social media phase.
He did. Yeah.
Lucky.
He did, like just almost like a year. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, what was I going to say? Oh, I think, it's clearly proven that trickle down economics don't work, but like, I feel like trickle down, like kindness or, whatever is going on. It works. I don't think I can overstate it. I mean, he changed everything. I mean, even just GLAAD changed so many things, He's giving a shout out to Will and Grace during his GE thing. I mean, that it's because it's so important,
And it costs nothing to be kind. Nothing. Kind to say, hey, thank you, or wow, I really liked X, Y, and Z. Like, good job.
You really did a really good job as well. Basically drawing a straight line from his work into GLAAD, into marriage equality, into everything else that's going on right now. I mean, that was you, or it was like somebody said, God, was it this film? My brain's a little scrambled lately, but there's the phrase, it gets better, but it got better so quickly, right?
It did.
That was in Yes, I Am, right?
Honestly, that I don't really
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I'm not. I don't think so, but I would say the essence of that is definitely there. Yeah.
Well, I don't think they paralleled them, but it was something like, things get better really quickly. And I parallel that to the whole campaign of It Gets Better. And it feels like things moved so quickly, which is great. And I think that's because Rick had his foot on the pedal,
He had it from the get.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We're going to sign off. Don't forget, you can still see Yes, I Am at the Lake County Film Festival virtually until the 29th of November. Please check it out. And if you've already made it through before that, then I don't know what to tell you. You've been spoiled. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.